Hi everyone, this is Oliver Lucanus, Conservation Ambassador for Fluval Aquatics. Today I want to talk about food specialists, because when you keep fish long enough, you'll eventually want to keep some species that have odd shapes or that have adapted to a special diet. To me, this is a bit of a crossroads, because modern flake and pellet foods are eaten by nearly all aquarium fish, and the number of fish that require special food is relatively small. The key for these species is to do your research. Some of them will eventually adapt to feeding on pellet foods. For example, spiny eels at my house all eat bug bites after some time in the aquarium. But there are others that may never accept prepared foods. As a basic rule, fish that have an extreme mouth shape often feed in unusual ways, and you will need to ask questions and ideally make a food plan for your new fish so you have an idea of what it'll cost. Added to that, most parents or spouses are not crazy about a container marked bloodworm or live earthworms in their fridge, and you'll want to get an okay for that kind of thing well in advance. Let's look at some of the extreme food specialists that are common in the hobby. First off for me are the spiny eels, because they come in all kinds of color patterns and sizes and occur in Asia and Africa, with the smaller species being excellent community fish. The problem is that they will need to be fed some frozen food, at least in the beginning. A problem with specialized fish is that your other fish love their food as well, so you have to think about how to feed frozen, live or fresh food only to them. That can be achieved by feeding them at night, or in case of the eels, by placing their food in a narrow bottle. They are smart and they will learn to enter the narrow hole to get their food. You can see these spiny eels at my place gorging on bug bites, but it took several months to wean them off frozen worms before they got to this stage. Another group that will likely catch your eye are pufferfish. Puffers are notoriously difficult to get on prepared dry food, but they readily take frozen or fresh shrimp, fish, clams or mussels, and they don't need to be fed every day. In nature, puffers search the substrate for snails and clams, and if you have any kind of invertebrates in your aquarium, the puffer will find them and eat them. To keep these fish in prime condition, they need regular, large amounts of food. The advantage here is that their teeth are really sharp, so you can put a shrimp too large for the other fish and puffers can cut off bite-sized pieces. That said, most puffers are terrible community fish, and keeping them often means they are alone in the aquarium anyhow, because their powerful jaws can also damage other fish. Next up are the mildly electric fish, both knife fish from South America, Africa and Asia, as well as the African mormyrids, a family that includes fish like the elephant nose and baby whale. Electric fish are near impossible to get onto dry food, and many feed at night and relatively slowly. They are not the best community fish anyhow, and should really be in a tank of their own or with some other specialists that get along with them. As interesting as these fish look, they are not ideal beginner fish. Freshwater stingrays are fascinating, and it's hard to resist keeping these fish at some point. But keep in mind that nearly all species get very large, at least the size of your laptop, but more likely the size of a canal cover, and they need fresh or frozen fish, worms or shrimp in large quantities. Unlike many other specialized feeders, they get thin quickly, and the cost of maintaining a very large aquarium with rays is higher than you may expect. These fish require planning and ideally their own freezer to keep their food nearby. Online resources are ideal for finding out what your fish like to eat, but take the time to speak to experienced keepers on how they maintain these fish and consider if you want to take on a fish species that requires this kind of extra attention. If you do, look at getting it used to feeding on a prepared food or something like small chunks of shrimp that you can easily retrieve from your freezer to feed on a regular basis. There are some predators that are really difficult to adapt to non-live food. Fish such as leaf fish hunt by their vision and require moving prey. Getting them to adapt to dry food requires real patience and some tricks to make dead food move around. I found that starting them with earthworms dropping slowly from the surface and eventually switching to sinking red pellets will sometimes work. Let us know if you're keeping some of the fish we mentioned and if you found a way to get them feeding on bug bites like the eels in this video, or if you have food questions for some of the more picky fish species. See you next time.